Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I am joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 7th episode. For those of you joining us for the first time, we're both season ticket holders for the Patriots, and we sit in the 300 level sections at Gillette Stadium. And we both enjoy talking Patriots, discussing games and transactions. So we figured we'd start a podcast and see where that takes us. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. Also, be on the lookout for a special episode later this week, where we will be joined by a couple of Chargers beat writers to discuss Sunday's upcoming game versus the Los Angeles Chargers. So just to start, Kevin, what was your overall thoughts on the game versus the Jets? What was the environment? Also, just to begin with, what was the environment for a 1 o'clock game this season? I know we've had some key matchups, some big games, prime time, 4 o'clock versus the Cowboys, Sunday night game versus the Buccaneers, where people said it felt like a Super Bowl or playoff atmosphere. What was the atmosphere like versus a 1 o'clock game versus a team that most people thought is going to be in the bottom 5 of the league?
Yeah. So going on the atmosphere section right there first, it was definitely a lot different in the crowd, and definitely even the fullness of the stadium right at the start. So you think Bucks, Cowboys, everyone's pretty much in their seats beforehand. You usually get that too with the later games, just because you have more time to tailgate versus for a 1 o'clock game, you really have to get there probably around 9 to 10. So you don't have as much time really to get going beforehand. So usually with the later games, you can start earlier and then get down to the stadium quicker. So but yeah, it was a lot not as lifeful as the Cowboys or Bucks or even the Dolphins games, which are expected. The 1 o'clock games aren't as much, but overall for the game, it was a big win. It was a key win. It was a must win, really. We all knew, we were talking about this ahead of time, if for some reason you didn't pull this game off, your season was done. So they won the game. They had to win the game, and they did it without any kind of question. You knew from, I'd say, the first offensive drive that they were going to be in control of the game the entire way. Just the way they were playing, they're more aggressive. They really kind of knew that they could take on the Jets and really run with them, not really run with them, but run laps around them. So I think that was a big key out of the game, and something that hopefully kind of the key takeaways that we got from this game. Can we see them going forward? And I'd like to hope that we would see this going forward against the Chargers, against the Panthers, against the teams coming up afterwards. So even though it was a really good game, it was a big win for them. The next step is to build upon this, and this is something they can do. So I think that's something we'll talk on a little bit later, but it was really encouraging to see them win decisively against the Jets this way. And it's nice to see that Bill still has a grudge over 20 years later. So I love a good grudge, and that's kind of why I think they put that beat down at the end. So any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'd say just overall takeaway was it was the first time this year that they played a full 60 minutes of football, or maybe second time. The Buccaneers game, they pretty much did as well, but there's the couple turnovers and things like that. This was the first game where they were pretty much executing on all cylinders. They scored on their first 6 drives. I think they had only 1 punt. So they were playing great in all 3 phases of the game, which we just haven't seen all year. I know some people might wonder after just seeing the score, is this a product of the Patriots playing really well, or is it a product of the Jets are just that bad? And I think it's a little bit of both. I think the Jets are a very bad team. They're very young and experienced. They have a young coach. So I think that might have played a factor into it, but it also showed that the Patriots, if they're playing on all cylinders, they can be elite. I know 50 points against a bad team, but it's still 50 points against an NFL team. So I thought overall they played well. Their defense played well in phases. There's a couple points here and there, which we'll get into a little bit, where didn't look great, but they made the plays that they needed to. Offense looked really good. Mac Jones' first 300 career passing game. Running game was just, they couldn't stop the run. And then the Patriots' run defense was actually the best, probably it's been all year, or one of the best. It looks like it's getting better each week. So that's something that's going to be important going forward, especially with some of the teams you have to face later on this year.
I know, definitely. So I think one of the key storylines of this whole year that we've been really talking about has been the offensive line.
Yep.
I think we saw a lot of improvement there. What were your thoughts upon how they played and really what the lineup was there for them?
Yeah, so the lineup I'll just start off with, because this is something you and I have been talking about since week one, halfway through week one, or after the second series when Trent Brown went down, that we think that Owenu should have been moved over to right tackle and Karras to left guard. And this is the first week where they pretty much had that position. And I thought this was the best the offensive line has looked all year. I think they allowed one sack and 5 hits, I believe.
Yeah, and that one sack was on a trick play.
One sack and 1 hit, 5 pressures. That's what the 5 was. But that was the best they looked all year. They're going to need to continue that going forward, especially next week with Joey Bosa of the Chargers. Joey, or is it Nick? I get that mixed. Joey's the one with the
I think it's
one of the
Joey
Bosa brothers. Yeah. But Chargers have some good players in the front seven, so they have to keep playing like that. But another thing that's just not, it's sort of without realizing it, you might not notice, is just how much of an impact the offensive line also has on the run game. So the first game of the year, Patriots ran for 125 yards, but then next 3 games, which is when their offensive line was probably the 3 worst games, 101 yards against the Jets, 49 yards versus the Saints, -1 yards versus the Bucks. So part of that might have been the running backs not playing great, but also a lot of it had to do with the offensive line. And then the last 3 games is which their offensive line has been the best. 126 yards versus the Texans, 120 yards versus the Cowboys. And in that, you had to pass a decent amount because you were coming back near the end. And then 148 yards versus the Jets. So if the offensive line can stay consistent going forward, no more key injuries. And then if, no more key injuries. And if they just keep playing consistent, not allowing people to hit Mac Jones, or if they're able to get holes for the running backs, this should be a recipe going forward for success.
Yeah, no, agree. Like you had said, we had been calling for this since week 1. And I think that's something we kind of saw after last week, that Owenu probably is better off at right tackle, not only for while Brown's out, but maybe his career. So some people just play better at the tackle spot. The guard spot, the left guard spot especially, is a quicker paced type of play. So it might just be something that he's better off handling the right tackle situation. So he looks a lot better there, and he really held down the fort there. And while watching that first trick play where Bourne through the touchdown pass, he had a key block in that drive, cutting the rusher on the end and stopping them from getting to Bourne. So he had a really good play there and a good play throughout most of the game. And like you said, the run game benefited significantly from this, and something that Harris had a lot of holes to run through that even I could run through. So I think they played really well. What are your thoughts on the coaching between really both teams?
Yeah. So I just want to make 2 quick points back on the offensive line before we move forward. One is, I still think Owenu actually played pretty well at left guard. Outside of the Tampa Bay game, he didn't play well, but the first 3 games he actually played pretty well. It's just when he's at right tackle, it seems like he's a potential Pro Bowler or all pro. So I think he is better suited at right tackle, but he still was pretty good at left guard too. But I think with this offense, with their deficiencies on the offensive line, I think right tackle is where he should stay the rest of the year. And then just another thing that I just wanted to bring up is Isaiah Wynn had at least his best game of the season, possibly the best game of his career. And considering both of us have been pretty down on Isaiah Wynn all year, he's been in my bottom 3, at least 3 of the first 6 weeks, maybe even 4. That was just encouraging to see. He looked like a first round left tackle. And hopefully he just needed the kick in the pants to see that he, after being benched for Justin Herron last week, that he just wasn't playing well. Hopefully that helps him going forward, where he starts to play like he did this week.
Yep.
So just moving on to coaching, I thought coaching was great. Josh McDaniels had some pretty good play calls. They were aggressive. They went for it on 4th down when it was like 4th and 1, which is something we hadn't seen all year outside of the Saints game, I believe. But I thought they were aggressive in all 3 phases. They played well. So definitely an improvement from last week, and we'll have to see. Hopefully the aggressiveness goes forward. I also like that we did see Kendrick Bourne a little more, like I've been calling for since week 1. I wasn't expecting them to use him in the passing game to actually throw, but that was good to see. Just another trick play where now you're just showing defenses that trick plays aren't going to only come from Jacoby Myers throwing. There's other people that can do it as well. So it's going to keep them on their toes a little bit. And it looked like they had a lot of trick plays, which is a little surprising that you'd waste them all on the Jets. But I think they still have a big playbook of other trick plays that they're keeping in their back pocket. But that was just a little surprising to see. I think part of it might be Bill's hate and for the Jets. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was interesting to see. Let's just see if the aggressiveness goes forward the next few weeks against some pretty tough teams.
Yep. And I think this is kind of something I was alluding to earlier, where the coaching in this game was really good. They were aggressive.
Yep.
They played like they weren't afraid. They weren't trying to play down to the last drive and hold it to be a tight score and think they'll win at the end, where they really kind of went for it and went for the win. So the big key is, will they keep doing this? Is it something that they knew they could beat the Jets and they knew they could play this aggressive? And are they going to play scared against the Chargers? Or are they going to try and really dial things up again? So that's really the key. So that's something I think, even after last week, I was saying they need to keep this kind of approach. They need to try and go for the throat and score really as much as they can and kind of be really aggressive and not as conservative as they've been, just because the game isn't leaning in that direction. So that's kind of the biggest thing. So I was really impressed the way that they did in this game, but my biggest kind of fear is that they might kind of go back into the roll direction on a tougher opponent. But we really need to see this kind of moving forward the way it was. And to really address the trick play thing, I think really the biggest reason why they did it, one was to try and go for the throat with the Jets. The other one is by having so many of these trick plays, it puts a lot of it on film, and it just gives more time that other teams have to consider this when they're going through with their game planning and tape review, film review, all that sort of stuff. So by putting all of this on tape, it makes them think kind of twice when they're seeing something and adds more stuff they have to be aware of. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult for opposing teams. And there's a lot of different looks now that they've given where maybe Mac Jones does get the ball in the Wildcat now, where teams weren't giving him weren't covering him because they thought that he wasn't going to get anything. So it just gives them more stuff to think about and can kind of create some mismatches in the future if they try and overthink something. And will maybe just take away some of the time they're planning against the regular offense, even though it's something you see maybe once or twice in the game. But we know that teams like to over prepare. So it may just kind of take a little bit more of their attention away from the game plan. Now going on to Mac Jones, I think he had another really good game. He started off a little slow in the beginning, but he ended up getting kind of running through really well. And I've just been every week, I'm just impressed by him. I'm impressed by his poise. I'm impressed by his command of the offense, how he looks. Just even looking at him against the other different rookie quarterbacks, it's night and day. And I was just thinking when I was watching him this week, like, you forget he's a rookie sometimes, just based upon how he acts, how he kind of commands the offense. And it's just something I'm just really impressed by, really everything he does. And I'm really looking forward to see him continue to grow in this offense, and kind of make some of those other teams wish that they might have gotten him versus someone else. So I think it's going to continue to look forward to that. But I was really impressed by him again. I think he had a really good game. First 300-yard game of his career. I'm sure it's not going to be the last.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. He's just someone that I was very big on him coming out of the draft, as we've mentioned before. Even just dating back to when he was with
Mhm,
Alabama in the even just regular season of Alabama,
mhm,
he was just very impressive. But just the last or the whole season in general, the poise he has for the offense, his ability to just not be afraid of getting hit. Not to say that he's looking to get hit, but
mhm.
someone that, especially the first 3 or 4 weeks when the offensive line was horrendous, knowing that he's going to get hit and pummel every single drop back, and him just not being phased by it is just something that you don't even you sometimes don't even see from people that quarterbacks that have been in the league for 5-10 years.
Jimmy
So that's
Garoppolo.
just been very encouraging. Very accurate passer. He does have some mistakes where there's a ball he'll overthrow or underthrow, but that happens to every single quarterback. So I've just been very impressed. And then it's even more impressive when he goes up against another rookie quarterback. So, for instance, this week against Wilson, before Wilson got hurt, just seeing how it's night and day. They're both first round draft picks, they're both rookies. Wilson was drafted higher. Wilson was taken second overall. Mac slid all the way to number 15. Just seeing how well Mac has done outplaying not even other rookies, but how he's outplaying other quarterbacks in general. He outplayed Brady this year when they played each other. It's kind of tough to compare one quarterback to another because they're facing different defenses, but just seeing how well he has been is just really impressive.
Mhm.
And then even just considering other quarterbacks that were taken ahead of him, Justin Fields yesterday, he had I believe 3 interceptions and 2 lost fumbles, and then another fumble as well. So just seeing how in control Mac is right now at this early stage of his career. Hopefully, it's something that he can just continue to progress and continue to build on.
Mhm.
Reminds me a little bit of another rookie we'll be seeing that, or rookie from last year that we'll be seeing this Sunday, Herbert. But so far, I've just been very impressed. And
Yep.
hopefully, it's just something, as long as he stays healthy, Patriots have their quarterback going forward.
Yep. I think it's something that we're starting off on this podcast and trying to get a little bit more traction on Big Mac Mondays.
Yeah.
So every Victory Monday, kind of how Dunkin' Donuts used to give away those free coffees on Mondays after Patriots win. After a Patriots win on Monday, well, on Sundays, I'll be participating in Big Mac Monday. I'll be getting a Big Mac every single time that they win the following Monday.
I was
Got
going to
mine
be asking if
today.
you're doing it. Yeah, I was going to ask if you already got yours and if you plan on doing it every single win or not.
Every single one. I mean, getting a lot of calories, hopefully.
Yeah, I can't do that for my health, but I'll be doing it after big games. So I'm going to the game this upcoming Sunday versus the Chargers. Very big
Mhm,
game. A team that's 5-2, that's ahead of you in the standings in the
mhm.
AFC. If they're able to pull that off, then I'll be participating in Big Mac Mondays next Monday. But after big games, I can't do it every single week. I can't do it after facing the Jaguars or the Jets, but just for my health.
Yeah.
I want to be doing this podcast for numerous decades.
Mhm. But going forward, the run game. I know we kind of
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit at the beginning. How do you think they fared? What do you think really looked well? What did they do well in this game? Because obviously they got over 100 yards of rushing, and they had over 3 touchdowns on the ground. So
Yeah. 4 touchdowns on the ground, 100, almost 150 yards rushing. This was their most rushing yards they've had
mhm,
all year. Like I said earlier, I think a big part of it was the offensive line.
mhm,
They played very well. They were able to hit their blocks. But I think another thing is just Damian Harris, at least the last 3 weeks outside of the fumble versus the
mhm,
Texans, just looks like he's like he was last year, but even better. He has an explosion once he gets the ball, just a very fast burst where once he touches it, he's essentially right at the line of scrimmage,
mhm,
running forward, full steam ahead. Which is something that I know Sony Michel might have had a 1,000 yard game or 1,000 yard season. He was a big reason why they won the Super Bowl in 2018. But this is a burst that we haven't seen in a long time. So he looks like he can be a top 5 running back. I thought he was one of the best, if not the best, running backs this past weekend. So he definitely looked good. I thought when we initially saw the injury report that Ramad Stevenson was going to be out, I was a little curious by that as a healthy scratch. I thought last week was Stevenson's best game as a rookie. outside of his preseason game, but he had a pretty good burst for his size, like LeGarrette Blount, but faster and more quick. So I was a little surprised about that, considering that I was expecting them to maybe run a little bit. And then I thought maybe they'd be using JJ Taylor as like a Deion Lewis, James White, getting some catches out of the backfield. But Taylor looked pretty good when he was getting the ball. Didn't look like as good as Deion Lewis would years ago, but for someone that's still young, he looked pretty good. I expect them as they go forward, depending on the matchup, use Stevenson versus Taylor. I feel like based on this, they're going to go with only 2 week in, week out. They're not going to keep all 3 active. At least that's what it seems like so far this year. But I think both of them have different skill sets. So depending on the matchup, I think they could go with one or the other. And running game looked good. It's something that if they want to be successful going forward, that's something that they're going to need to utilize, especially with the strengths that they have. They just have to make sure they hold on to the ball.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Harris, you just see like you said, the explosion, also the powerfulness that he has of running, that his legs are always moving. They're always churning. The second he gets hit, he's going to get another 3 to 5 yards at least. And that's something that you didn't see with Sony Michel, really. You would see him get kind of the yards that were blocked, and that was it. But Harris not only gets the yards, he always gets at least back to the line. That's another thing with Sony. You couldn't really say. And he gets the tough yards. And we really saw that again this game. And even Taylor ran really hard near the end zone. He was really pushing forward. So he looked really well there. And I think hopefully this gets him on the right track, gets him kind of right after that Bucks game with that really big fumble. So I was a really big fan of him last year and was hoping they're going to use him more. And we're still this year. I think he's going to be a really quick running back for him. Kind of like the other running backs they've had in the past for those kind of pass catching ones. So those little smaller backs like not Burkhead, Whitehead, and that sort of thing. Woodhead, not Whitehead. So
and then just one thing that I just want to add on is you saw this in the preseason, and then even now is just the camaraderie of that running back room. You saw it in the preseason that after Stevenson had the big 91-yard run, that all the running backs ran to the end zone to congratulate him. Which preseason, some of those players weren't playing, so you might expect that just to congratulate someone. But the thing was in this game when JJ Taylor got his first career touchdown, you saw the first thing I noticed was Damian Harris was in the end zone, like celebrating with him. I was like, wait a second, is that Harris? Harris ran all the way from the sideline into the end zone to congratulate JJ Taylor on getting his first touchdown. So the camaraderie is something really good to see. And it seems that they're just going to be pushing each other in practice as well to get better and better each week, which is only going to be helpful for them going forward.
Yeah.
So I guess next thing, one thing I just wanted to mention a little bit is I was glad that they finally were getting Kendrick Bourne and Jonnu Smith the ball, at least Smith before he got hurt. Kendrick Bourne, like I've said pretty much every single week for this podcast, he's one of your most talented players on offense. You have to get him the ball in some form or fashion, either throwing him the ball, doing screens, reverses, double reverses. Once he gets the ball, he's elusive, he's quick and shifty. He's able to make people miss and get yards after the carry or after the catch. So it was good to see him. I think he had 4 catches, 68 yards. Then he also had the touchdown pass, 25 yards for a touchdown. Also, Jonnu Smith, before he got hurt, he actually had his best game of the season. Granted, he didn't have a touchdown. I think he had 2 catches for 51 yards, had a 5-yard run, and then they also targeted him a couple more times. So I know he got hurt. Hopefully it's something not too serious and he's able to come back soon and he's able to build upon his good game here. And if he is, him mixed with Hunter Henry is something that it's something that we were hoping to see we were hoping for all offseason, the 2 tight ends that is going to cause mismatches. So we'll have to see how serious the injury is, but at least that was something good to see, is Bourne getting the ball more and even Smith getting the ball more.
Yeah, I don't think I really have anything to add there. I think we've been talking about Bourne trying to get the ball more often for a while now. I think that was nice to see. I think he's a really good playmaker. I think he does a lot more than you see of Aguilar or Harry or anything like that. So it was nice to see him get the ball. And even he's more elusive or quicker than Myers too. So
Yeah.
as dependable as Jacoby is, he just not as he doesn't have that kind of burst or kind of playmaking about him. He's just a tough, dependable receiver, but sometimes you need a little bit more. So
Yeah.
Bourne really gets you that, and Smith does too. And I think this was a good game to get Smith kind of in the right head, right state of mind. So hopefully that continues, and hopefully the injury isn't too bad with him.
Yeah.
The running defense, I think that's something that was one of our number one concerns going into the season, based on how it looked in preseason and really continuing from the first few weeks of the season. Was kind of really porous. Wasn't really good overall. I think that they had again another improvement week. They looked really well in this game, and I think the run defense is starting to become one of their strengths going into this defensive team. It's something I'm always questioning. Well, why are they even trying to run on them now? Why aren't they trying to pass on them with their secondary as weak as they are? And I think this week again showed their run defense has improved again, and I think part of which Guy has been playing really well now. He's finally kind of gotten back into the season. And Barmore has really come on of late, and he keeps improving week after week. And he had his highest snap percentage of the year. He had played over 60% of the snaps. So he looked really good when he was on the field. And I was just really impressed by what he was doing. So any thoughts on the run defense? Anything to add on there?
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was the best that they looked all year.
Mhm.
Going into the season, we thought their run defense was going to be one of their strengths just because of all the additions they had in the offseason.
Mhm.
And then and how weak the run defense was the last 2 years, 2019, 2020.
Mhm.
First 4 weeks, they looked pretty atrocious. I'd say when it first started turning around was the Bucks game.
Mhm.
Buccaneers ran for 120 yards, which granted that's a lot for a team that doesn't run well, but I think that was by design. And then they looked a little better. But here's just some stats for the run game in the first 7 games for run defense:
Mhm.
74 yards versus the Dolphins, then 152 yards for the Jets, 142 yards for the Saints, 120 yards
Mhm.
for the Bucks, and then 67 yards for the Texans, 122 for the Cowboys. But the Cowboys was a team that was averaging 170 yards per game rushing, and then 62 for the Jets. So you're seeing the line starting to go down of the running yards that they're allowing, and you're not really seeing those big plays, big breaks that you were seeing earlier this season or any of the past 2 seasons. So it definitely is seeming like this is turning into one of their strengths. It might have just taken a little longer. Part of that might be the shortened training camp preseason due to tackling, and then also the one less preseason game too that might have had an effect as well. But hopefully, this is them turning it in the right direction. They allowed exactly 90 less rushing yards this game than they did when they played the Jets the first game. So it's definitely encouraging to see. And then with some of the teams you're facing later on in the year with Browns, the number one run offense in the NFL, Derrick Henry later in the year, Bills, this is something that you need to make sure that if your run defense isn't good, you're going to be in a tough position to win that game. So if this keeps going on, they'll have a pretty good shot.
Yep. And to kind of really segue that into the defense as a whole, like I was saying, if this run defense keeps improving, it's going to kind of put a little bit more pressure now once it gets more on film that, hey, maybe we can't run against this team now. It's only going to put more pressure really on the secondary.
Yeah.
I think defense as a whole right now, we're seeing the run defense improving. But the pretty much everything else about the defense is still kind of a concern. The
Yeah.
pass rush, other than Matthew Judon, is pretty much non-existent.
And
Except
Barmore.
for except for Barmore up the middle. But other than those two, there's not really much. Uche has seen his play kind of increase, but I'd like to see it a little bit more and have him kind of do more. And I think having him play in place of Wise more often would be a lot better because we know how I feel about him.
Yeah.
But the pass rush being non-existent, the linebacker play, they are not good in the passing game. Bentley's actually played really well the last couple of games.
Yeah.
It's kind of showing what he looked like his rookie season, why he had some promise, and hopefully that continues the rest of the year and throughout. But he isn't the fastest linebacker, and Vanoy is not as quick as he used to be. He wasn't really quick to begin with. So they really get exposed in the passing game against running backs or tight ends. So that's something that they just have to keep kind of worrying about, have some safety help with that. And with Jonathan Jones going out on IR and kind of for the season with his shoulder surgery, I think it was today. They're down even one more corner. So they were kind of hurting before and were kind of weak on the corner spot and now got even weaker. So Miles Bryant, I actually really like a lot. I think he's going to do really well. And I was actually really surprised that they had exposed him to waivers after the cut downs were. But he's going to be back. He's probably going to be taking more of the slot role on this team. And there'll be Mills and JC Jackson on the ends, but Mills is really concerning to me, especially being down Jones. He's probably your weakest corner of your starters, and teams are going to be starting to target him more and more just by looking at him. He wasn't signed to do this job. He was supposed to be more of the chunk kind of role, playing really all of the plays, safety, that sort of thing. And that's where he would succeed well. He's just not a good boundary corner. He's not quick enough for it, and he gets really exposed there. So that's something I am worried about more right now as the season goes on, especially with Jones being hurt, where we saw Jones in a couple instances. They would actually play just JC Jackson and Jones, and I think they did a lot better that way. I think that was when Mills was actually hurt. They ended up using Jones as the number 2, and they actually did pretty well when they went to that route. But I'd say the secondary is my biggest concern. And there's not really much out there. There's definitely not really anything on the free kind of route. No one that plays man that well. And even trade route, there's a couple players, but it's going to cost you. And so I'm not sure if teams would be willing to give cap room can be maneuvered in numerous ways.
Cap space next year is also tight too. So you have to take that in consideration as well.
Yeah, but there's ways that they could do it. It's just I don't know what teams would be willing to make those kind of moves. There is Keanu Crossan from the Giants. He was on that team before. He had some experience. He actually covered Tyreek Hill pretty well in that playoff game that the Patriots ended up winning the Super Bowl. There's Justin Coleman, who's in Miami. He's a potential target with their season not being really well, and he played for them and Patricia in Detroit. Then you kind of get into this other kind of, I don't think teams would really give them up, but there's Darius Slay with the Eagles, who's not happy with this contract. There's A.G. Tyrell in Atlanta. He's a really good cornerstone piece. Maybe they might be thinking they might not be able to afford him. But that's pretty much it. There's not really much out there. People, thank God, McCourty is hurt right now because
I don't think that's something you should be thinking. But
it's just if he wasn't hurt, it would be completely up their alley to bring back an aging veteran that is past his prime, like Jamie Collins, like Kyle Van Noy, like really any of these guys that have come back recently that they're familiar with. I wouldn't have been surprised if they tried to get him back, and I'm actually kind of happy that they don't have the opportunity to do that. As much as I liked him, but it's just not the right scenario for him here. So what would your thoughts be on this defense as a whole? Are you concerned in the same areas that I am?
No, I think you have to be concerned. Even this game, they gave up only 13 points, but they still gave up 13 points to a fourth-year quarterback that has never played before, Mike White, which some people, if you just heard the name and saw his like picture, you might think, does he even exist? Is he someone that's like someone on Madden where it's like year 14 or 15 of franchise mode and it's just the drafted players? So definitely there's still some concern there. Some good thing is Jawan Williams had the best game of his career. So that's at least encouraging. Granted, it wasn't against great receivers, but that's something that hopefully you can build upon and just due to like he just keeps making those next steps. Like you said, Bryant looked good. Bethel, he's played the past couple games and has looked decent. So hopefully it's something that they'll be able to fix within or get a cheap replacement either through trade or on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
Interesting stat I actually found out this week is even after the games this Sunday, the Patriots have the fifth best passer rating allowed for any defense in the NFL at 84.7, only behind Bills number one, then Saints, Rams, and Cardinals. So they actually are defending the pass really well, which is surprising. I would have thought they'd maybe be 10 to 15th. They're also sixth best at interception percentage at 3.3% of dropbacks. So it's something that's good going forward, but we'll have to see. That definitely is biggest concern.
Yeah, I think like you had said with the Joanne Williams too, is clearly one of his, I'd say probably one of his best games, and he's shown flashes this year.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, was this kind of a springboard game for him? Or was he kind of playing with more confidence because the Jets? But they do have really good receivers on the Jets. It's probably their really one kind of good key mark there. But the problem is their line in quarterback play isn't really doing it for him. But he did really play them really well. I'm hoping this might be more of a kind of a show and what could happen for the rest of the year. Because he was a second round talent, he was drafted pretty high, so maybe they might be able to get something out of him. I'm not banking my buck on that, but I'm hoping that might be the case.
Yep. So I think moving forward, what would you say your 3 up were from this game?
Okay, I'll go through them first and explain them, then I can go listen to yours. So first would just be the offensive line overall. I think they played probably one of their, I'd say the best game they played all year. I think that just started too with the combination of Owenu at right tackle, Karras at guard, and having Mason back from injury too. So I think they really were put in the best position to succeed, and kept Jones upright for the most of the day. He only had, I think we said, 1 sack, and that was really on a busted trick play situation, and he was only hit a couple times. So they were pressured a couple times. So this is definitely the best game. And by seeing how well, the other thing with Mac Jones getting enough time to throw the ball, you could see him opening up the ball more. Where if you're getting rushed all the time, you only have 2 seconds to throw a ball. You're not going to be able to spread the offense out, go deeper, and you get to see that a little bit more this week, just because he had more time to let the plays kind of break the way they're supposed to, and that way he can get the ball a little bit more downfield. Number 2, Christian Barmore. I think he continues to play each game extremely well. And he's been a very impactful player, especially as a rookie. And he keeps getting better each game. So I'm really, really just impressed by the way that he played. He had that huge 4th down stop. He gets in the with a quarterback really quickly. He gets in the backfield. I'm just really impressed by how Barmore played this game and overall. And then I would say Juwan Williams, like I said, he had probably one of his best games as a Patriot, and he played really well. He had a few different pass breakups. He was strong. He was playing. He had good reaction to the ball. He wasn't just reacting to what the player was doing, but he was had some really good anticipation. So that was just another thing I was impressed with again on that. And those would be my 3 up for the game for this week.
All right. I'll go with mine, and I just had to go with a little more. They go scoring 54 points and holding pretty much outscoring the opposing team by 41 points. I have to go with a little more than 3, like I've done a couple times this year. But I think number 1 has to go with Damian Harris. This was his best game of the year, and he just looked like a top 5, top 10 running back, which you were anticipating going into this year. 14 carries, 106 yards, 7.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. He looked like a first number 1 running back. And he had, like we've said earlier, we've said the past few weeks, he has a burst through the line of scrimmage where once he gets the ball, he's already right at the line of scrimmage, running right forward. So I thought that was probably his best game. Number 2, I have to go with Brandon Bolden, which I never thought I'd ever have him in the top 3. He led the team in receptions as well as receiving yards, which I saw something on Twitter where it was If someone told you Brandon Bolden was your leading receiver in both catches and yards, you'd think you'd be lucky to be maybe win the game, maybe be lucky to score 20 points, but to score 54 points and him being the leading receiver was something I was surprised by. I am not a big fan of Brandon Bolden on offense. I like him as a special teamer, but I don't like him when he runs the ball. Like even this week, he 2 rushes for 0 yards, but he had 6 catches, 79 yards, a touchdown. He had more receiving yards on Sunday than he had in 5 of his last 8 seasons combined. So I have to just go with him because it was something I wasn't expecting, and he just had a really good game. Number 3, I have to go with the offensive line as a whole. Like you said, this was their best game of the year, and you have to hope that just going forward, they're able to keep build on this to stay healthy. And if Isaiah Wynn plays like he did on Sunday, if everyone else does as well, they'll be pretty successful going forward. Number 4, I have to go with Mac Jones. Like you said, first career 300-yard passing game. He just keeps getting better and better each week. Number 5, I have to go with Jawan Williams. Like you mentioned, he was targeted 5 times in man coverage, allowed 1 catch for 8 yards, had 3 pass breakups, and a 39.6 passer rating against. I even thought about including Christian Barmore as well, like you said, but I'll just keep it with those 5. So 3 down. I'll start. This was actually pretty tough for the reasons like we mentioned before, how they played their most complete game since last year, played a full 60 minutes of football, but I'd have to go with some of these might be a little bit of a stretch, but number 1, have to go with Jalen Mills. 5 catches allowed on 7 targets, 41 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 defensive pass interference play. I don't think he played like terrible, but for a number 2 cornerback, granted, like I said last week when he was there, I don't fully blame it on him because I don't think he should be a number 2 cornerback. I think he should be more of a safety. But in this defense, given the position that he's playing, just wasn't a terrible performance, just wasn't great. And just considering how well the rest of the team plays, I just have to go with him as 1. Number 2, I have to go with the secondary as a whole. They didn't play bad, but they allowed Mike White to 20 completions on 32 attempts, 200 yards, and a touchdown pass. You allowed Mike White offense to score 2 touchdowns on you isn't great. I know the game was kind of out of hand by then, but just considering some of the offenses you have to face in upcoming weeks, Chargers, Browns, Bills, that's something that the secondary definitely has to get better. And number 3, I'm just going to go with the pass rush as a whole. They had only 2 sacks and 5 quarterback hits, and they were going up against 2 quarterbacks that Zach Wilson, who he's a rookie, and then Mike White was playing in his first career game. They got a little pressure, but still the past few weeks, they haven't been getting enough pressure, at least to my liking. This should be a team that's either leading the league in sacks or right in the top 5. And outside of Judon and Christian Barmore, they're just not getting the pressure that they should. Hopefully there's something that they're able to change going forward, especially against some of the good quarterbacks that you're going to be facing, making sure that you're getting pressure, especially considering how depleted your secondary is. You need to get the pressure to make the quarterback make a decision earlier. If you're not getting pressure, then it's allowing the quarterback all day to throw. And he's going to be able to find those open receivers if they're not being pressured. And with a secondary like it is now, it's more likely that the receiver will be open. So that's just my 3 down, just based on this game. It was tough to pick 3 down, but that's just who I had to go with. What about you? What was your 3 down?
I'd say 3 down, pretty tough to come up with as well, like you said. So I really only have 2. I have number 1 with Jalen Mills, like yourself. He's just getting really picked on. He's not he's not a number 2 corner. The slants, he gets bid on every single time. He can't defend that. He's not quick enough to really play the position. He needs to really be at that safety position. So maybe something that could come out of this. Maybe they could move him to safety if Jawan Williams starts playing well, and have Jawan Williams play the other boundary, and have Bryant play that slot, and maybe they might succeed that way. And have him kind of be that safety robber position. I think that would suit him a lot better. He's that way he doesn't have to be worried, kind of more about his speed. And my second down was just the injury bug in general. They had multiple players get hurt in this game. Smith, they had McCourty get hurt, and a few other guys as well. So that got banged up. So really want to hopefully see that these aren't kind of long-term injuries, something that they'll kind of get healed and do better in the and be more prepared for the upcoming games. So hopefully they're healthy for those. So not really a play down, but just a down in general that we saw from this game. Some kind of key injuries that we were seeing from that.
Oh, that's fair. So I think next is just what are your thoughts on the Patriots' path forward to securing a playoff spot?
Yeah. I think really these next 6 weeks are going to be the most, it's a make or break part. We'll see kind of what the Patriots are made of and see how they do out of this. They really have to at least have a winning record coming out of these next 6 games. And I think you're in a pretty good position to do that. And they've kind of gotten some luck out of this. The Chargers have kind of shown that they can be beatable, and we'll get into them a little bit later on this week. But they did beat them last year really well. We did see the Ravens beat them, show that they can be stopped a little bit. And then you have the Panthers. Sam Darnold was benched this weekend. He hasn't played well the last couple games. Baker Mayfield may not be playing in the game, or if he is, there's a good chance that he may get hurt again in it, just because that labrum isn't going to heal itself. It's going to need surgery. And the running backs have been hurt too. Chubb and Hunt. I think Chubb is back in the practice field this week, but still the two of them being banged up. So I think they have a position to start racking up some wins, and they need to. Just looking at the kind of what the route is going to be, you're going to have to get either the third wild card spot or somehow get the division, which is very unlikely, but they still actually kind of control their own path there. Technically they can win out and they'll win the East. I don't think that's going to be happening, but crazy things can happen. The Bills could lose a couple games. That way you don't have to win out. But that's another possibility as well, just because the path forward for the wild card is going to be really tough, because the Ravens are probably going to win the division. It's a toss up between them and the Bengals. Whoever doesn't win that is probably going to be getting one of the wild card spots. Browns, I don't think may make the playoffs this year just because of Baker's shoulder and the injuries that they've been receiving. I think they may start losing some games. West, they have Chargers, Raiders, Chiefs. I would assume the Chargers would probably end up winning out, assuming Herbert keeps playing well. That leaves the Chiefs and the Raiders for one of the other wildcard spots. And then it's probably going to end up being a tie. There's a good chance there's going to be a tie for the third. And that's when you're going to need to have these wins against these teams. Let's say the Chargers do lose some games. You'll have, if you win head to head against probably the Chargers, the Browns, and then what was the other one? The Colts or something along those lines. At least those two, you're in. So you need those tiebreaker scenarios. So you need to start racking up some wins. Next game is pretty much a must win to kind of see how it's going to go. So that's kind of what needs to happen. So we really need to probably be 10-7, but we'll see. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. Like we were talking about last week, I think that it's actually a little tougher than we were saying last week. I think at worst 10-7. Just because the teams you're going up against, the Browns, they have a lot of talent. I know they're banged up right now, but if Baker's able to come back and just play like himself, along with Chubb and some of the rest of the players, they'll have a shot. Raiders, I still don't buy into the Raiders, but they're 5-2. They're 2 games ahead of you right now. Chiefs, I know they're playing bad right now, but I still think they're going to turn around. They have too much talent. I don't see the Chiefs not making the playoffs. So it's going to be very close coming down to the end. So you're going to need these big wins against the Browns and Chiefs or Browns and Chargers. Theoretically, if you win out, you win the division, or even if you go 9-1, there's a good shot you win the division if you sweep the Bills. It's definitely going to be tough, but they control their destiny, so it's we'll have to see. It's just I think it's going to be coming down to the last week, and we'll have to see if they play like they did this week. If they play like they did against the Bucks and the Cowboys without the turnovers, they'll have a shot, but we'll have to see going forward.
Yep, just got to keep racking up wins.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of concludes where we're going for today. Just want to let you guys kind of remind kind of what Eric was saying before. We are having a second episode this week, kind of going over the Chargers, kind of splitting up this into two. That way it's not too long. And we're also going to have some special guests on from that San Diego area. Fernando Ramirez, he's a beat writer for SI for the Chargers. And then Gavino Borquez, who is a writer for the Draft Wire at USA Today in the Chargers Wire. So be on the lookout for that. That should be dropping on Wednesday or Thursday, time dependent, and should have some really good insight on what the Chargers are as an organization and what they've really improved from last year. So get some good feedback from them, kind of have a good idea of what we're looking at going into this game. Any other thoughts?
Oh, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, guys, for listening. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. And follow us at Pat's 300 Level Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.